All right, welcome everyone to a Thursday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, here at the Fans First Sports Network. It is our State of the Franchise episode, which we do every Thursday. And yesterday we had our Whiteboard Wednesday show, and we featured Brian Flores and his blitz schemes, his simulated pressures, his fire zones. And today we're going to double down on the Minnesota Vikings by welcoming in frequent guest, friend of the show, David Stefano, to talk all things Vikings. Dave, welcome on.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin. It's always great to be on your show and great to listen to your show, by the way. There's been some awesome stuff, especially with your interview last week with Coach Stefanski. There was tons of Vikings memories that I encourage my listeners to check out, and they brought back warm, fuzzy feelings. Too bad it's not happening in Cleveland.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you for mentioning that. He did. He had a lot of fond things to say about Minnesota. I mean, that's really where he got his start in the NFL, and he's a very cerebral guy, interesting guy to talk to, very generous with his time and his thoughts. So I'm always appreciative when I get some time to talk with him. But today we're talking Vikings. And you were mentioning to me before the show, everything's kind of kicking off. You had some big press conferences going on this week, and then obviously teams are hitting training camp. Just as a starter question, scale of 1 to 10, Dave. I know you're always excited when things start. Scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for this particular Vikings team?
I think this one's going to be special.
Okay.
Very special.
All right, now we're going to get into all the reasons why in a minute. I think so too, and I'm going to talk about why a little bit in this show. I think the Vikings are a little underrated, but there are a lot of questions about the quarterback. Right? You've got JJ McCarthy, his job, man. You know, they opted to move away from some people or to not entertain some potential offers because they believe in this guy. What do you think the Vikings really see from JJ McCarthy that makes him feel so confident he can be the man?
Well, they see, one, his leadership factor. He's got the it factor. I've always talked about you want a quarterback or anybody, whether it be in any sort of leadership position, and a QB is in a leadership position, to have the it factor. And it's dynamism, I'm mispronouncing that word, that draws people to you. Justin Jefferson is one. He stepped into that role as well. And it's an easier way to lead, get people on the right page, coordinate. There's a whole lot of things that go into it, but he's got that. He's had it since high school. And he's developed it, and he's not the only one that's developed it. Kevin O'Connell and crew have purposely worked to develop young J.J. McCarthy's skills in that, to get to know the offense, to get to know the players, right? They put Justin Jefferson's locker right next to him. They've developed quite the relationship. They're seeing it going to Timberwolves games and doing all sorts of other things off. They want to get on the same mental wavelength to build the chemistry, as we talk in the O-line room. It is a wonderful thing. They already see it. They're developing it, and it's going to come to fruition this season.
I think the it factor is a real thing, and it's a hard thing to put your hands on. It's kind of nebulous in nature, but having coached football for 30 years, I can say this: the best quarterbacks I've ever coached had it, whatever it might be. The way they talk to their teammates and interact with them, the way they are in the locker room, the presence on the field. And the ones I've had that have struggled just haven't. And it's not often about your ability. We know this. Everybody, when you reach this level of football, can play the quarterback position. But can you do it within the framework of the offense and what you're being asked to do, and in a way that inspires and leads your teammates? And I think that's I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a huge aspect, obviously, of what playing quarterback actually entails. What about the rest of the Minnesota offense? We know they've got great weapons at the skill positions. they've struggled in the run game. I mean, since 2022, I think they're 29th in the league in yards per carry. I know they had some concerns on the interior of the offensive line this year. Have they done enough with the line and the run game to support McCarthy?
I believe so. That was a big focus after last season. At the end of the season press conference, Kevin O'Connell said he was furious, and it showed, about how the interior offensive line was the weakest point, and they let pressure up the middle, and the Vikings, won and out during the playoffs, and we lost our last game against the Lions and then against the Rams in the playoffs because pressure up the middle. If he could solve that, he figured that's going to help, obviously, Kevin O'Connell's love for the passing game, which he does have. And it will also help, and it's shown via, if you look at any sort of running stats, the run game. So we went out and we grabbed Ryan Kelly off the Colts. We grabbed his teammate, Will Fries, coming off his first contract. Now, he had a leg injury last year where he broke a bone in his leg. That's showing to be all healed right by now. But he was playing at a very high level. So we got two guys that played next to each other, which will help. And I think Ryan Kelly's one of the best centers in the league. And I think that age and wisdom is going to help J.J. McCarthy because he's working with J.J. every day. They're going over, just the normal pre-snap call stuff and all the plays and what is he looking for and all that sort of stuff. That's all happening. I think that's going to help. And then in the draft, we went out and drafted Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. Considered number 2 or number 3 guard in the draft for this, the 25 draft. We grabbed him. Is he going to be a super stud? Oh, I hope so. Do I expect that? We'll see. Is he going to be highly serviceable and a quality guard in this league? I think he has every single tool to be that. Now, there's usually a rookie welcome to the NFL moment, right, for linemen. And I'm curious how his is going to be, because linemen generally take longer to develop unless you find a unicorn. They take longer to develop than other players, like a wide receiver or somebody. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team gels, that offensive line, and how that will affect not only the passing game, but the running game, which you said. I think Kevin O'Connell is planning on more of an efficient run game. Now, I've had some fans say, Dave, we're going to run the ball 60% of the time. It's great. And I said, no, we're not. Don't expect that at all. Kevin O'Connell likes to throw 60% of the time. Do I see that percentage coming down? Yeah, maybe by a few points. But we're not going to be suddenly run dominant like we were in the 90s. It's not like we have Adrian Peterson back there and we're playing, 3 yards and a pile of dust. Football, that type of game is evolved from everybody's psyche, and it generally doesn't work unless you've got some powerhouse offensive lines and backs to go along with it. Prime example, Philadelphia Eagles or Detroit Lions. Both have done that. Now, football is cyclic, as we've discussed before, and everything will come back in due time. Is the running game going to be part of that comeback? Do I think Aaron Jones, now behind a better line, is going to get more rushing yards? Maybe. Probably. And he's so good out of the backfield catching the football. I love it. But we also grabbed Jordan Mason from the Niners to be the bully back, as I like to call it, the guy that's in the red zone, the guy that can push piles and make scores. Now, the red zone was our biggest beef over the last few seasons with the run game. We couldn't score there. But with better blocking, we should be able to get better opportunities to do that and not have to rely on wide receivers in a confined space.
Now, I agree with you. I think Ryan Kelly's an excellent player. I think Will Freeze is a guy probably just continues to get better. Having Christian Darasol back would be a huge advantage. Where's he in his rehab? What's that situation look like right now?
Now, he reported with the rookies as well as Will Fries on Sunday of the week. The Vikings put out a preliminary PUP list, and neither of those two players were on it. So if Darasol is not on it, that's telling us he's a full go and ready to, rock. We'll see. I had a show with Tyler Fornes on Monday night where Tyler thinks it's more of he's a vet, so they're going to wait a day or two to determine whether he's on the PUP, finish the physical or do whatever they need to do. But I'm not so sure. If he's ready, let's roll, because he is one of the top 5 offensive tackles in the league, in my opinion. In my opinion, he's one of the top 3, and he's not number 3. But he will definitely improve the run game. And if you look at our run stats, talking about the run previously, when he was healthy and played last year, they rocked over the left side. So when he's back, combine that with all that new interior, you got Brian O'Neill on the other side, and you've got a potential for one of the best offensive lines in the business.
Now, speaking of best in the business, let's flip it over to the defensive side, right? Last year, Vikings finished tied for number 1 in the league in takeaways. They finished 4th in sacks. They were 5th fewest points per game in the league. Some really good measurables for that defense. They've added some good pieces. I think the Javon Hargrave addition is going to be important for them. Brian Flores' scheme is evolving. It's interesting because I did that show on Wednesday, and you look at like their blitz frequency from 2023. They were at 51%. They're the only team in the league to blitz on more than half their downs, and it fell to around 38% last year. But yet the sacks increased and the turnovers increased. Really interesting. So what Brian Flores was essentially doing was showing teams some of the things that he'd shown them the year before, but then post-snap rotating into some different things. I mean, he's a master of disguise, really is. You combine Flores with all that talent on that defense, how good is this unit? I mean, is this a top 5 defense in the NFL?
Yes. Emphatically, yes. If everybody stays healthy, and I know every team's going to say that. If everybody stays healthy,
yeah,
they are. With the addition of Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, that gives us pass rush juice up the middle, which was lacking. Now, Harrison Phillips is an awesome defensive tackle, but he wasn't asked to rush the passer. He's asked to move people in different directions to allow the linebackers or whoever's blitzing into those holes. And he does a great job at that. Well, now we have 2 relatively elder statesmen in Hargrave and Allen who have shown they can rush the passer on the squad. Now, do I want them playing 90% of the snaps? No. I do not. That doesn't work well for guys that are 30 or over. But I don't think they will anyways, because, as you mentioned, Brian Flores' defense evolves. And he takes a defensive plan, and it's individualized for each opponent on whatever given Sunday, and he develops it. Now, with the 2 pass rushers added, along with Dallas Turner now moving into the edge 3 role, if you want to call it that, I'm envisioning more of what I've termed a waves defense. That's what I'm calling it. And all it is imagine in hockey, you have line exchanges, right? Where guys skate 100% for 2 minutes, and then boom, to the bench they go, and a new line comes in. Well, it's not going to be a whole line exchange. It's going to be individuals, and it's going to be based on down and distance, situation, the score, all that sort of stuff. So, but it's going to be individuals coming in. We may have a rush guy come in, like Hargrave or Allen, and they'll be in most of the snaps anyways. Or we might have somebody that's good against the run, Jalen Redmond. He might pop in. And you're going to see the mixing of these defensive tackles and the moving of the defensive tackles or the removal of the defensive tackles. Flores is known to run a NASCAR package where you take 3 or 4 edge guys and put them on the line because you want speed to get up the field after the quarterback. Well, we have 3 very good edge rushers in Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Turner and I expect a breakout season by Turner, by the way, that will help do that. But the whole idea about Flores, and you mentioned it, he tries to deceive. He's a chess master. He wants all his players to know what every other player's responsibility is so he can move them around the most. Now, he also has players he calls multiples. You have Josh Metellus. Josh Metellus played almost every single position on the defense last year. Numerous spots. He even lined up at defensive tackle. And for those that don't know, Josh Metellus is a safety. But he also lines up at nickel. He lines up at defensive tackle. He's lined up at linebacker. He's edge rush. He's done all these things because that's when Flores first got in, he brought him into the room and says, I envision you doing this. And he empowered Metellus to do that and to learn about it, and he has. Well, then we get Andrew Van Ginkel last year, who's edge rusher, but also we play the 3-4, so it's technically an outside linebacker, drops back into pass more often than Jonathan Grenard on the other side. Well, then take Dallas Turner. When Dallas Turner played last year, he's taken more of the Van Ginkel role, and he can drop into pass coverage, and he's big enough and fast enough to keep up with anybody in the flats or across the middle. Well, suddenly you've got all these different players that can play different spots and be effective at it. You want to keep them fresh. And you want to maximize by down, by field position, by whatever the situation is. And you're going to get waves of players coming in and going out on the defense. And it's going to confuse offensive coordinators. The looks a quarterback's going to get when he lines up is going to confuse them, especially young ones. The only time we got beat last year was by experienced quarterbacks, Goff and Stafford. So when a young quarterback comes up there and suddenly he sees something and things are moving, hey, Harrison Hitman Smith just came up. And suddenly you see quarterbacks questioning their thinking process. It makes for a rough day for the opposition. And that's exactly what Brian Flores likes to do. And that's what I expect to see this season.
Yeah. You mentioned Josh Metellus. I did a Twitter breakdown of one of Flores's blitzes. I was up on Tuesday. Metellus comes up to the line. He's lined up like an edge rusher. And at the snap, he literally turns his back and sprints into the deep half of the field and winds up being a cover 2 safety. I mean, that's some like Dick LeBeau, Troy Polamalu stuff. You know, that mad scientist stuff that you really don't see. Takes a versatile player to be able to do that. And you're right. You mentioned, you know, the only loss is Goff and Stafford. And the thing that allowed those guys to succeed was they were willing to stand in the pocket and get punched in the mouth. And, you know, stand in there to the very last second so they could take that extra second to diagnose what the heck was going on and know where to go with the football. How many quarterbacks are willing to do that? How many quarterbacks can actually withstand that? You know, those are two big guys. So you're right. Brian Flores forces the offenses to operate from an uncomfortable platform, no matter how they choose to do it.
He wishes to dictate what the offenses do versus just react to what the offenses do.
Yeah, one of the guys I coach with, he's a defensive coordinator, and he calls it being offensive on defense, that you're dictating to the offense how the pace is going to go or how the exchange is going to go, et cetera. Do you think the Vikings are underrated nationally? I mean, I looked at it on FanDuel and on some of these sports books, and their betting odds are anywhere between like 10 and 12, 12th best in the league. Are there 10 or 12 teams in the NFL better than the Vikings?
Well, I don't think so. And do I think the national press thinks they're underrated? Yes, I do think that. And that was evident in the spring when the sports books came out and said 8.5 wins.
Yeah.
Now, part of that, or the most likely big chunk of that, is J.J. McCarthy. What has J.J. McCarthy done at this level? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nobody's seen him. Now, I get to watch every single clip that comes out from either the Vikings or fans or whomever. So I'm watching what he does. But the national press isn't watching what he does. That doesn't happen. Now, I don't know if you saw Kevin Seifert over on ESPN had a brilliant write-up on what the Vikings did with J.J. McCarthy in his offseason. Now, as the seasons marched on, the summers marched on, especially recently, you're getting more and more hype of the Vikings, that they are a really good team. And it's coming from various, talking heads. Now, I tend to like Kay Adams. She's a beautiful young lady. And I like her football acumen, which is brilliant. She's got a football head. She believes the Vikings are winning the Super Bowl this year. I'm all for you, Kay. You go, girl.
Yeah, okay. Tell me what your expectations are then. I mean, what would be a realistic expectation for this team? What would make for what you believe to be a successful season for Minnesota?
Well, Kevin O'Connell's had a quarterback that's thrown for 4,000 yards in every season he's coached so far. Last year, Darnold threw for almost 4,300 yards and 39 touchdowns. Do I think J.J. McCarthy's going to do that? Nah, not quite that much. But is he going to bump 4,000 yards? Good possibility, especially when you consider rushing into that number. I easily expect that. I expect a lower interception rate, like sub 15 on the season, and I expect at least 26 touchdowns by him, if not more, 28, somewhere in there. With that, him playing at just that level, which is, I would think, top or number 10, 12, 13, 14 ranked quarterback, with the weapons we have on offense, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, just to name a few, and that defense, I'm expecting 13 wins. That's what I've publicly called for. 13 wins and the division.
All right. You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen, right? 13 wins.
And the division, the North.
That's right. And if they don't,
and then deep in the playoffs.
If they don't win 13 games, send all your complaints to David Stefano, please.
Absolutely. I'll be here to take them.
All right, Dave, let's get you out of here on this. I asked this question of all my guests here on the State of the Franchise show. I love the responses. It's always interesting. I don't really know, because, again, I'm not in tune with some of the franchises the way that a lot of these guests are. So who's the team? I think I know who you're going to say, but we'll see. Who's the team that, as a Vikings fan, you just loathe?
Well, I know you want me to say the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's not the case.
No, that's not who I think it's going to be. I don't think it's you.
And it could have been the Dallas Cowboys, but that's not the case. Or it could have been the New Orleans Saints, and that's not the case either. It's within the division. It's the team that their fans tout how many titles they've won. Heck, they named their town after it. Title Town. Just happens that a good chunk of those were done in World War II when there was 7 teams in the league and everybody was off at war fighting, but they're still counting those. It's the Green Bay Packers. They look like a trash can. They play like a trash can. It's the Green Bay Packers. Now, the fans, believe it or not, I get along with their fans. They got great fans. And but it's the team. It's they've been my rival since I've been grown up eons ago, and they will always be the biggest pain in the entire NFC North's backside.
Now, I had June Whitfield from our FFSN Bleachers to Speakers podcast on a couple weeks ago talking about the Detroit Lions. He also said the Packers. So when I have the Bears on, we'll see if the Packers can sweep the division, much like the Eagles have done over there in the NFC East. That'll be very interesting.
Well, June and his partner Foster over on Bleachers to Speakers and our Chicago franchise, frustrated Chicago sports fans with pay, we've talked about this in the past. And yes, I guarantee you.
Okay, I got you.
Packers are sweeping the division.
Okay, all right. So, tell us what you're doing over there at First and Skol before we get out of here.
Well, besides talking to you, I sit there, or I'm a member of, like I said, the NFC North. We do an NFC North roundup show on Wednesdays. We go live, and it's called Who Will Be King? We're looking for a Packers podcaster. If you know of any, send them our way. We need somebody representing the green and gold from Wisconsin. We can't find them. And it's the only team Fans First Sports Network does not have a podcast representative of. So if you know anybody, grab them there. We do that on Wednesdays. Thursdays, and Mondays for that matter, we have the Real Forno Show. Tyler Fornes is my host, or the primary on this, and he works at A to Z Sports. He's a writer, been writing for years, and he does this for a living. So he gets on there, and then on Sundays, generally, in the off-season, Saturdays during the regular season, we have two old bloggers, which is myself and Darren Campbell. We've been commenting publicly on the Minnesota Vikings for over 2.5 decades apiece. And we take a longer form look at what's happened during the week and whatever the news is, along with whatever we feel like talking about that's Vikings related, and we have a good time doing it. We've been doing it for quite a few years. That's what you can find over on Vikings First and Skol. And when the season starts, we have a post-game show as well.
All right, man. Sounds great. Packers fans, you hear that? Dave's looking for a guest. After he's told us how everybody in the division hates you, you'll be treated fairly if you come on.
Yeah,
right? I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
We'll put you in the middle, and just like you reside in the middle of the division, and we'll go at it.
Fair enough. Dave, this was a blast. I really appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and you do great work. And I love that they've got you on full-time doing shows every day.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Having a blast doing it. Can't believe I get to do this for a living. It's very exciting. So, all right, for David Stefano, this has been our State of the Franchise episode on the Minnesota Vikings. Tune in tomorrow, our Friday show, The Hot Route with Pez from Pez's Picks. Conversations about sports and life, a lighter show to head you off into your weekend. Until then, hope everybody has a great day. Take care.
Go Vikings!